Alright guys, as Big Papa sits there and warms up, we get our 30 horsepower on here. You factor in my ego divided by the square root of stars, you get lost. But today's going to be a different type of episode. Let's dive into it, shall we? Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Rolling with T-Bone. If you're new here, welcome in. My name's T-Bone. I shoot motorcycle related content and any kind of content really. If you are new here, I invite you to check out a few of my videos. If you think I'm right for you, consider giving us a subscribe, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. If you're old here, welcome back. You know what's going on. Let's dive into it. Alright guys, welcome to a new kind of video for Rolling with T-Bone. You see the thumbnail and you know why you're here. As today we are going to be talking about a UFO event. And of course I'm going to be talking about the UFO event that happened in Fyffe, Alabama, February the 10th, 1989. So if you're new here, I know I give you all the spiel in the opening, but if you just found us, we cover a little bit of everything on this channel. We cover cryptids, we cover UFOs, we do just regular old moto vlogs. Eventually we're going to do a little bit of paranormal stuff. But today, this is a requested video by a gentleman who has been a part of the Rolling with T-Bone family for a long time now. He brought it back to my attention. The UFO over Fyffe, Alabama. So y'all sit back, grab a bag of popcorn and your favorite beverage, and let's dive into it. Alright, now that I got my helmet buckled, did all my horsepower and my figure in and got lost and forgot to buckle my helmet. But today's episode of Rolling with T-Bone, of course, we're going to be talking about ufology, UFOs, a subject that's just as deep as cryptids, paranormal, and it is a subject that has, just as the cryptid stuff has fascinated me ever since I was a young man. So we jump into the time machine and we go backwards to February the 10th, 1989. A day that forever changed a small Alabama town called Fyffe. A farming community, had about 1,200 residents. And a lady named Susan Stockman called her local sheriff's office that night and made a report that she was seeing lights hovering in the sky. Now, there has been more sightings than just the initial sighting. The first sighting that was Susan's, they saw the lights. She made the call. The sheriff came out and investigated, and the sheriff, well, would have been the chief or assistant chief, and the sheriff saw the object. Now, in the time frame of this thing, I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit. 1989 would have been right in the time frame of the release of the information talking about, of course, the stealth bomber, the triangle shaped airplane. The stealth bomber has been and always will be a very important benchmark piece of aircraft built by the U.S. military. The stealth bomber, of course, had its triangular form, and from the ground it's triangular. Now, playing devil's advocate, from 1979 to 1993, I'm just going to generalize that time frame. some of the UFO cases that were reported during that time have been determined to have been misidentifications of the stealth bomber. And you got to think 1989 in a heartland. And of course, you know, if you're military and you're going to try to test equipment such as the SR-71 Blackbird that was built at Groom Lake, you would do the same with the B-51 stealth bomber. You would go into the heartland. You would go into rural places where there's not a lot of, you know, city life. Now, I am not saying that all of these UFO reports were misidentifications of stealth bombers, but you can see how you could draw the conclusion that in 1989, there could have been at least one of these sightings could have been a test flight of a stealth bomber. Or, you know, something like that. So that's as far as I can play devil's advocate with it, because the reports that came in were not of the triangular craft at first. They did have a triangular report, but this report was of an orb. Now, a lady named Susan Stockman, of course, made this report, and it got picked up by the local newspaper there, so everybody went out and started looking. Now, the ladies who ran the paper have reported that they have seen elongated UFOs, orbs, and triangular craft. They've reported seeing all of it. So then we come to the point of not being able to play devil's advocate no more. There has been, and of course I talked about it a little bit in last week's episode, there has been reports of UFOs. I mean, this subject's going on now since really 1947. But the triangular shaped UFOs, I can remember watching reports about the triangular UFOs on Unsolved Mysteries back in the 80s and early 90s. So what you had at this time with these crafts is, and it's the same reports, not just in Fyffe, Alabama, but there's other places where you have these reports of a triangular craft, but the thing that always stands out about the triangular crafts are as that when people sees them, if they're only a couple of thousand feet in the air, they're not making any noise. Now, any craft that Americans military has, or Russian military, or any military, our science, especially in that time, in 89, would have been, everything we had would have made noise. That's the one thing that can be agreed upon. You would have heard a jet stream, you would have heard something breaking the sound barrier, you would have heard sonic booms, and there was nothing. No humming, no nothing. And to my knowledge, in my research, what I have researched, there was no triangular craft that would have presented itself in the 80s that could hover. They all had to, meaning they all had to have a runway to take off, they all had to have a runway to land. The B-51 bomber had to be able to reach a speed and take off. I think the speed was like 71 miles per hour. But you know, you get the point I'm trying to make. They had to have a runway to take off on. They couldn't just straight vertical lift. Nowadays, that's, you know, back then that was reserved for helicopters. These days, it's not science fiction anymore, it's science fact. So, in the vein of playing devil's advocate, I don't believe, now this, again, guys, I'll say this in this episode because it's a different subject than what we normally talk about. But I don't believe that these people are making it up. Now, I'm not trying to make you believe in UFOs. I'm not trying to change your belief systems. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I'm just presenting you what I have found about the case in Fyffe, Alabama, which, to be honest with you, isn't a whole lot. My research kept just coming up. You know, I would get good chunks of research. I would think I would be going somewhere, and then it would just dead end. There would be nothing else. So the only time the Fyffe, Alabama UFO incident had major press was, of course, when Inside Edition, which got wind of the story, it became a national story. And Inside Edition came to Fyffe, Alabama to, you know, find out what was going on, basically. So in the vein of triangular UFOs, I do believe that there could be some misidentifications of not only the stealth bomber, but at that point in time, I think the SR-71 was still being used. So if those were being misidentified as, you know, spacecraft, as unidentified flying objects, then that can explain some of them. But you got this problem with explaining all of it, because there were times when officials would say, hey, we wasn't doing no aerial stunts, there wasn't no testing, you didn't see one of our aircraft. Okay, so now when you take into account, and again here we have to take into account something our government is very good at, even in this new culture of, you know, Freedom of Information Act, they, you know, all the redacted information that they have released to the public, all of the stuff that is leaked out, you still have a certain amount of cover-up. So, but you do have the government admitting now they cannot explain all these cases. Some of these cases are UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. We know them as UFOs, unidentified flying objects, which is what they've always been, as far as I can tell, ever since the first reports came out about them. So then, if you cannot have a craft, you don't have the technology to have a craft that can vertically lift and take off, that is completely dead silent. And I'm not just saying this in our country, guys. I'm saying this is reports from around the world. All governments are saying they don't have craft like this. Now, would they tell us that they have these crafts? No, especially if it's top secret. But I have seen things personally in the sky that makes me believe that the UFO sightings are real. Are some of them misidentification? Sure. Just like with Bigfoot, some of those are misidentifications of maybe really large wolves, bears. I can say, play devil's advocate, and I can say, yeah, some of those can be. But when you get to the unidentified flying objects, it can't be all misidentification. Because you have on video and you have pictures and you have reports of these UFOs taking off vertically at Mach. I mean, they just go up so fast they disappear. Or they're able to move so fast, 1 minute they're there, next second they're gone, within like a split second. So then, if we're going to do this series going forward, then I have to explain to you how I have come to the ideal that I do believe in UFOs. Certainly. So let's break that down real quick before we go any further. So, for me, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the ideal that with all of the planets, the vastness of space, and with our own new technology such as probes and satellites, they are still discovering new planets in our solar system, the Milky Way. So then, knowing what I know, and again, I'll go back and I'll say this, I've stated this in other videos. I might have even said it in a live once. I am a Christian. I do stand on that. I believe in God. I love my Jesus. And the very first thing we learn about God, before we learn anything else about God, the very first thing we learn, yeah, my gas is good. The very first thing we learn about God is that He loved to create. That's even how the Bible starts out. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the very first thing that we learn about God, is that He loved to create. So then, taking all of that into account, why would He just stop creating with just this planet? Because certainly we're not perfect, so He didn't perfect the He didn't perfect the formula. So why would it not be feasible that God would go to other planets and create other people? Now, you have to play devil's advocate with this subject a lot. So people would say, okay, T-Bone, what about the gray aliens? What about green aliens? What about tentacle aliens? I don't know, guys. I don't have all the answers. I think that if they were created of God, as the Bible teaches us, we were created in God's image. I think that who would be out there on those other planets would be us. Other human civilizations is the way I see it. Now, could there be other types of creatures and stuff? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Gray aliens, white and red aliens, And that's what gets reported the most, is that they are 3 foot tall, gray aliens. Some of them are green. Really big head, big black eyes, small bodies. So then when you take all of that into account, sure, anything's possible. So then why am I playing devil's advocate with this subject? Well, because it kind of refreshes in me what was the people in Fyffe, Alabama said. The people in Fyffe, Alabama wasn't mesmerized by UFOs. They was not mesmerized by the ideal of life on other planets. They just simply didn't want people making fun of them, thinking that they were backwards and hicks and all of this. So I can understand that. And ufology, just like cryptids, just like people who deal with paranormal phenomenon, yes, I do believe in ghosts. The Bible even teaches us about ghosts. The Holy Ghost. There are such things as ghosts. Yes, I believe that. Too much evidence for it to not be true. But again, that's stuff that we're going to dive in as we go forward on our journey here on Rolling with T-Bone, and in the rabbit hole too. But when you take into account all of these things with ufology, all of the reports, all of the pictures, guys, there's too much evidence that points to there is something to it. It's kind of like I've said with Bigfoot in the cryptid world. You got too many people seeing the same thing, reporting the same thing. They're orbs, triangular craft, cigar-shaped craft. I mean, guys, these aren't just concentrated to one place in the world. They're worldwide. They're being seen everywhere. So then, if it becomes a worldwide phenomenon, then for me, it's like there's just too much there to support the ideal that, yeah, these things are really coming to Earth. Yeah, these things really are happening. Now, in the vein of what I was saying a minute ago, that's where the people of Fyffe didn't want to be made fun of. Nobody wants to be made fun of for what they believe. And I'm so glad that in our culture today, whatever we have lost in the last 40 years, 50 years, our culture is a lot more accepting of people who share their experiences, who love to tell their stories about things that have happened to them. Our society today is a lot more accepting of those things than it was even 20 years ago, because these subjects are very taboo. You know, it's kind of like I've said before about, you know, sorry guys, my nose is itching. It's kind of like I've said before about cryptid content, you know, cryptid reports and content. People reporting these things, you know, don't want to be made a mockery of. And back in those days, it was very, especially in the Bible Belt. Now, you got to remember Fyffe, Alabama here, guys. This is the Bible Belt. This is the heartland of the South. You know, residents, 1,200 residents. And you've got more than just the people that I mentioned seeing these things. So you've got a whole, basically a town of 1,200 people that are seeing these things, who are corroborating each other's stories. So yeah, you're going to get defensive about it. I would. You know, no one has the right to tell you that you haven't seen nothing, or that, y'all, you just mistake what you saw. You didn't really see what, you know, you seen what you seen. And if it was a UFO, you saw it. If it was a Bigfoot, you saw it. If it was a Wolfman, you saw it. You have the right to see these things and to say you've seen them. And that's why I'm so happy that our culture has advanced more today than it ever has in history. Because, I mean, the farther you go back in history, from the 80s to the 70s to the 60s to the 50s to the 40s, man, these things, the more taboo it was, the more you were not supposed to talk about it. The more you were not supposed to lend any kind of credence to it at all. You were supposed to just keep your mouth shut and don't draw attention to yourself, because people didn't want to risk being made fun of. Now, the one thing about the case in Fyffe, Alabama that stands out to me the most is that it's not just citizens that are seeing it. It's not just the citizens who live there. I mean, their police department, their police officers are reporting these things, seeing these things. So there was obviously something going on there. And, you know, if you do your research, which now this one subject has opened up my research, and there's a lot of little towns across this country where things like this have been seen, and, you know, they're pretty sure what they saw was not a ball of fire, but it was a UFO. So, and the one that stands out to me at most is the one where a lady and her daughter were heading home, and they could see the UFO on top of the mountain, and they thought it was an airplane. So they stopped their car, and they watched this thing for over an hour. And the lady giving the report said, you know, it looked like if you were going to put a measuring tape up to the sky and go from point to point, she said in the hour and a half they watched it, it might have moved 4 inches across the sky. So, you know, then your question becomes, or my question becomes, what was it doing? Why was it hovering in this spot for so long? Was it looking for something? Were they having to work on something inside the craft itself? Or was they just opening the door saying, hey, look at us, here we are? You see, those are the questions that makes this type of research and these types of stories and things that we're talking about. These are the types of stories that make these things so important. And, you know, Fyffe, Alabama is not far from me, guys. And I myself have seen things in the sky. You know, I think anyone who has ever went out at night with a cup of coffee, or sat down at night with a cold beer and sat up and looked at the sky, you know, you're going to see something streak across the sky that you don't understand. And that's why you know, I always, because me and TJ watch the sky, me and my son watch the sky, and we're always seeing crazy stuff. And, you know, everybody, always satellites, you're seeing satellites, you're seeing satellites. Well, No, not always. I know what a satellite looks like when it tracks across the night sky. And I know what something unidentified that tracks across the night sky, stops dead in its tracks, and then disappears. There ain't a satellite made that does that. I'm sorry. There ain't a drone made that could go that high, because a lot of my sightings, guys, came from when I was young too. This, like I said, this stuff's always fascinated me. And at my grandmother's house in Tennessee, you had a 360-degree panoramic view, because she lived up on top of a hill called Schoolhouse Hill. We called it Buzzard Roost. And you could see in a 360-degree panoramic view everything in the night sky, because there wasn't no city lights. We were in a small little town that went to bed at 8 o'clock. You know, they roll up the sidewalks at 7 o'clock. So you could see these things in the night sky. And, you know, all of us, my whole family, my aunts, my, you know, friends at the time, we would see these things and we were like, holy crap, what are we seeing? Because we knew what airplanes were. We have an airport, as little as it was, it had an airport called Kim Campbell Airfield, and he would fly his planes around Ducktown all the time, so we knew what planes were. And then back in those days, when I was a teenager, Copper Basin Medical Center would call for life flight. And life flight helicopter at the time, that would come from either Knoxville or Chattanooga to pick up patients from Copper Basin Medical Center, was a Huey, the Belle Iroquois. You could hear that thing coming. When it crossed Big Frog Mountain, you could hear the doo, 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 and you knew that it was the Huey coming across the mountain. So we were constantly looking at skies, because we were constantly seeing airplanes, helicopters. Ducktown was, if you looked up at the night sky, you would see jet after jet after jet, because the way our skyline was laid out, you could see the planes going to Knoxville, Nashville, and Chattanooga. You could see the airports being covered. You could see the planes that were going toward Atlanta, Hartsville, Jackson. You could see all those things from where we were. So we would notice these flight paths, and we would think to ourselves, that's not a regular airplane. So yeah, we're going to dive into this on this channel. We're going to get into this rabbit hole along with everything else. But guys, there it is, the UFOs over Fyffe, Alabama. I wish I could have found a lot more information, and maybe in my digging at some point we'll come back and we will retouch on this subject again. But I have to give some shout out to the Recycled Hooligan. He's probably in the Premier chat right now. The Hooligan has been with me on my channel for a long time, and I've been with him for a long time. He's a very good friend. He always has a nice word to say. And he had asked me about the Fyffe UFO before, and then he brought it back up, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually planning on doing that. So I thought, you know what, there's no time like the present. We got some 60-degree weather that's hit the south for right now, and I've been doing a riding, so I thought, you know what time better than right now to do it. But y'all remember to come over and check us out on the rabbit hole. Come and hang out with us on the Political Writer channel, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Political Writer channel. Come and hang out with us if you got a UFO story or a Bigfoot story or a ghost story, anything you'd like to share with us. Email John. His email address is in the description on the channel, and we'll schedule you to come in one Sunday evening to tell us your story. Now, guys, until the next time, I'm going to say we got this thing shot and ready to go, and it's getting late in the day and I'm getting hungry. So until the next time, y'all remember to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and hey, thanks for watching.